Welcome to the Wilson Wealth Show, a thought-provoking show about building wealth in the new economy. Each week, members of the Wilson Wealth team and their guests will discuss how to navigate the world of personal finance, stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship to help you build wealth in the new economy. And now, here is your host, Ciera McCosh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wilson Wealth Show. My name is Ciera, and I have Ablavi and Maurice with me today. How you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you, Maurice?
I am awesome. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Always good to hear it. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Today's topic is your child still a good investment? Now, I know this sounds like a loaded question, but we are asking if helping your child past the age of 18 is a worthy investment for you or not. So let's start out with some facts. According to the USDA, you spend an average of roughly $285,000 a year raising a child. Oh, not a year, in total. Oh my gosh. Raising a child to the age of 18. This seems kind of low to me. What do you guys think?
I would have to say it does seem low. I know I budgeted like $25,000 a year. Granted, I'm new to the parenting thing, having an almost 4-month-old.
Right.
So that equates to about $485,000 through age 18.
Right. But I mean, you have to think. So this fact was done 2015. That's the last time we checked on this, right? But I personally think it's a lot higher too. I think it's more expensive to raise a child, and also we're keeping our children longer than 18. You know, times have changed, at least for a lot of parents. I think the culture has changed a little bit there, and kids are having to stay at home a lot longer, right?
Right. And that's so interesting to me because the cost of college is going up, and yet kids are coming out having to stay at home longer. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, of course. But yeah, it is interesting that dynamic is now more of the norm than the exception, I would say, from when I got out of school back in 2003.
Right. Exactly. So costs have changed, and the whole culture overall has changed. Kids are staying home a lot longer, which means it can be a lot more expensive raising a child now, especially if you are helping to raise that child past the age of 18. So now we're going to talk about, is this a worthy investment for you? Because I know some people can't really afford to help their kids out with things like college or getting a first house or a new car. All of these things, it all adds up, and, it can cut into things like your retirement. So let's compare what raising a child now was compared to 20 years ago,
Right.
So I think, Maurice, you would have the most stuff to say on this one because you have older children. Me personally, I have no children. I am a child in this situation who's still getting help. So, and Ablavi, I know that you're still in the first few months, so we haven't hit that mark yet. So I think Maurice would be able to tell us a little bit more about this.
Depending on what day of the month it is, particularly with the homeschooling due to coronavirus, sometimes I disown my kids. I may not have any kids to speak of, but all jokes aside, I think when you get into the concept of kids being more expensive to raise, there is one key frame or key phrase that's been thrown around kind of loosely, but I think it's becoming more a reality, and that's the term boomerang kids. You throw them out at 18 and they come back 4 to 5 years later. And that window from when they come back to when they finally leave the nest is getting longer and longer. And so I've adjusted as a parent and as an advisor my expectations for when a child will leave the house from, let's say, 21 to 25, depending on when they graduate from a 4-year institution or get a couple extra years in grad school, to about age 30 now, when a child is actually out of your hair. And because that window, that 18 to 30, is no longer 18 to 24, 25, the expenses are definitely higher. And you kind of are faced with a choice. I know I had to take care of you through 18, through undergrad, but what's my responsibility and my choice here from mid-20s to hopefully just age 30. And so that question and those expenses are definitely higher than they were for my parents in the 70s when they were coming up.
Right. And at the end of the day, this is a choice, right? You are choosing to help your child as an adult because, you know, from 0 to 18, they're your responsibility. You got to do it. You know, you just have to. But past the age of 18, technically, you could wipe your hands of it and be like, you know, they'll figure it out like I did. But we're trying to figure out here, like, does the financial part of parenting end at the age of 18? Traditionally, not really. Like, I still get plenty of help from my mom. I'm still in college, you know, thank God she's helping me pay for things there because I can't afford to have a full-time job right now. It's just too much. And I know a lot of kids are, well, I say kids, but young adults are in the same position right now. And even when you get out of college, it does take a hot second to get back on your feet. You know, this is from my point of view. I know once I'm out of college and I get my career that I want, doesn't always happen right away, first of all. You know, not everybody gets their dream career straight out of college. And college doesn't always last 4 years anymore. It takes people longer nowadays because they're having to work more or their parents can't help them. So it's kind of a whole mess. And you kind of, as a parent, get to choose whether, like, what percentage of help you're going to give your child and for how long and what's appropriate. Because there's really no instruction book for how to help your child over the age of 18. There's really not. There's plenty for under the age of 18, but really not for any for over the age of 18. So that's what we're talking about, you know. So let's start with college.
Well, let me say this. Let me just add this to piggyback off of what you said.
Okay, go ahead.
I think what's really important, even before the child is over 18, is to be positioning yourself to be able to invest in them in the highest capacity possible or the greatest capacity possible, right? So that to me says that you always want to have income forever. Or you want to have such a great retirement that you're well positioned to help this child, young adult out as needed. And I also feel like after the age of 18, and you guys can tell me what you think about this, but I feel like after the age of 18, you know, you give all the benefits of the doubt, but then you have to really be objective and, like any other investment, determine if it's a good one, right? And then you have to have certain markers as far as the continuation of the investment. You know, if you have a child who you're paying for their college and their grades are atrocious, okay, I think a conversation needs to be had. You know,
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me personally, the way I see it is always position yourself to be able to help your children out as long as it makes sense, as long as they're being productive, position yourself to help them out. Now, the help in my mind decreases over time. If you're looking at like a 35, 40-year-old, it's different than as opposed to like a 25-year-old, you know, and so on and so forth.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a good way to think about that is you do kind of have to take the feelings away a little bit once your child becomes an adult and look at them more objectively, right?
Of course.
And yeah, and look at the bigger picture, evaluate your child. How did they do in school? What are their ambitions? What are they good at? You know, what can you see them doing? What do they want to do? And see if it's worth investing them to go to college. You know, if they're not really into it and their grades are really bad all throughout high school and they don't really want to go to college in the first place, but you want them to go to college because obviously as a parent, you want them to have the best life, it's probably not going to be a good investment for you. You're probably going to waste some money on a few semesters before they're like, all right, this isn't what I want to do. And they finally leave. You know, that's a very real thing that happens very often, you know?
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right, Ciera. And I think another rule of thumb, like any investment, is to don't invest more than you're willing to lose, because a very well-intentioned young adult could have a great business idea, and for whatever reason, things don't progress like they anticipate. You know, a pandemic could happen that could throw a monkey wrench in. So you just never know. So I just feel like it's important to look at investing in your children like any other investment. But the key goes back to you have to be positioned to invest in the first place, right? I can't
Absolutely.
I can't reiterate that part enough.
No, it's true.
Definitely. I agree with the Ablavi on that. And I think that's kind of what, in my opinion, is really just how I raise my kids, how I just talk to people who aren't even my clients. I just feel like parents these days just want to put their heads in the sand and give their kids this college education and think that that's the springboard to prosperity. And they do all these things K through 12. And I'm even going to go to how kids are even educated, the private school, the extra classes and whatnot. And I tell them to me, that's a 1990s playbook, because unless your kid's going to walk into a STEM related field, it's highly likely that their starting salary is not going to even begin to recoup what you've invested and what they've invested. And that becomes key, because typically you or the student, or together, you're looking at six-figure student loans. So you put well into six figures into this, attempt to give your child financial prosperity, but then their starting salary and future earning prospects aren't up to the bill. And so when Ablavi says you need to make sure you're in position, earn for life, things of that nature, what you're really saying is, I'm looking at 2020 and beyond. I see the income gap. I see the wealth gap. You need to, now when you have kids, now when you decide what you're going to do for them, you need to take that into account and, almost be financially independent in a way to do these things for your child, because it's not a game anymore. The rules have changed. You can't count on them just stepping into a career that's going to take them off your balance sheet. And that's very important. And I think a lot of parents are sitting here, they're putting money in their 529 plans and they're hoping their kid's going to leave, but more than likely the kid's going to come back and still be on your books, if you will. And you are that much closer to retirement, and your earning trajectory is not as robust as it once was when this all started.
Yeah,
and then that's such a great point, Maurice. And I also feel like it's really important for the child to have some skin in the game. Well, the young adult or the older child, right? To have some skin in the game as well, because I feel like people value what they have some kind of stake in. And whatever that means, that can be figured out. But I think that, yes, we all want to be in a place to be able to invest in our kids as much as possible. And definitely that's the goal. But I think there also has to come a time where it's like, okay, what can you put into this? It doesn't have to be as much as I'm putting in, but I need you to put something in so you can have some skin in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that brings up the next question of like, when do you go from helping out your child, investing in your child, making sure they have a good future and they have like a step up in life, to enabling them, to basically keeping them back because you're helping them too much, because they're becoming too dependent on you, which is a whole nother issue. And that does happen quite often. So you kind of have to find a balance. Like, you have to look at your kid objectively, see what they're doing. Does this match up to what I'm expecting of them with what I'm giving them in a reasonable sense? No? Okay, we need to have a conversation,
Right. I mean, there's a fine line between doing what everything that you can to help your child and enabling them. I think there needs to be some hard conversations that are had in terms of expectations, and some tough love if those expectations aren't met within a reasonable time frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be that way. I mean, I know they're adults, and you want to treat them like adults, and you should absolutely treat your children like adults with respect, and, leave them to their devices and trust that they'll figure it out. But you also have to think, like, this is your money. You're investing quite a bit into their education, homes, cars, whatever it is that you're investing into, businesses. You kind of have to protect yourself too. Like, they may be your children and you love them and you want to trust them, but you also have to protect yourself, because that's how your retirement goes down the drain. If you're not paying attention and things aren't working out, and you realize that you've you're drained. You don't have anywhere else to go, and your kid hasn't gotten any further than they were a few years ago, when all of this started. And that's a tough conversation that a lot of people don't want to have because they're your kids. You don't want to think about them that way. You want to trust that they always have the best intentions, that they're going to do really well, even if they do have the best intentions. But life happens, and you kind of have to keep it in check and protect yourself.
And I think the word I keep hearing from both of you is, like, you say adult and then you kind of stop yourself and you go back to calling them kids. But I think you should go with that first impulse, which is that these are adults. And so we're not talking about the child you dropped off on campus in the fall immediately after their prom and their graduation. We're talking about the 25-year-old who's, had some life experiences, who is, 5 years out from their 30s and kind of getting into the prime of their life. And how would you handle any business dealings with an adult? You put it in writing. And I think what you do is you don't hope for any particular outcome. You plan for all the outcomes. So
exactly.
You have a plan for, okay, we're going to do this, but if this doesn't work, here's where we're going to support you to transition out of our, I won't even say out of our households, off our book balance sheet. So it could be, let's go with Ablavi's idea or comment about starting a business. We'll help you, we'll seed this business for you. You have 5 years to make it work. Our part in this is living expenses and maybe some investment capital to start the business. If the business doesn't work, we'll transition you to your own place, maybe get you a down payment or something on an apartment. And then after that, you're hitting the streets. You're on your own. I mean, we did our part. We helped you start a business. It didn't work out. We helped you transition to some lodging, and then we're done. And I think when you set that out, when they're most optimistic about their future, which is, during the college and early 20s, I think that's a fair arrangement. And I think that protects the parent. And this is about enabling. It protects the child's need to create, or the adult's need to create an ability to support themselves, immaterial of the circumstances or the results of anything they try. In other words, you try to do something, it didn't work out. It doesn't mean you go homeless. It means you go and try something else, but you got to find a way to support yourself. And that's how I think you get around the enabling them and kind of creating a lifelong dependent on mom and dad's finances.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the goal is to not have a 50-year-old still at home. That is a problem.
Yes, and that is and we are speaking from experience, right? Yeah. Not personal, but we've seen it. We've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It happens. It does. It absolutely happens. And, with all of that being said, there also has to be, from the perspective of a 25-year-old who has had things go wrong with college, work, school. I mean, it happens. There also has to be a little bit of grace, especially in the times that we're in now. Everybody's kind of struggling with this worldwide pandemic. So I do think that there should be a little bit of slack with everything that's going on, but it is important to have boundaries, even with your own children, and say, this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not okay with, however, you should absolutely reconsider some things just with the time, I would say. I just wanted to add that in there. Everybody's kind of struggling right now. I have so many friends who are recently laid off and are really worried about what they're going to do because they don't want to have to move back in with their parents. They had a career going, they were well off, and just all of a sudden it came crashing down, which unfortunately happened. So with that being said, unfortunately, life does happen and things don't always go the way that they're supposed to go, and everybody needs a little help time and again. So as long as you have a plan, it's okay to get a little help here and there. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, definitely agree with that. And just also to interject, I think that for folks like yourself or anybody who may be listening that doesn't have any children right now, or maybe they're like me and they only have one child and, they're contemplating having children or having more children, I think they really need to have an honest conversation with themselves, knowing the reality of having to support someone for 30 years, you multiply that times 4, that's a significant amount of money. So I think that it's good to be able to think about these things on the front end and have an honest conversation with yourself and your partner, your spouse, whatever the other person is, whoever the other person is. Or if you're just by yourself, have a conversation like, is this something I really want to do? Because I'm of the mindset that if it makes sense, I'm going to help my child, my children, until I'm not here anymore, if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if it makes sense also kind of stretches into like, you kind of have to, again, like we stated before, evaluate your child and look at them objectively.
Of course.
And help them in the way that helps them the most, not just what helps whatever expectation you had, So you can do like an alternative to college. Like if college is just not their thing, and we're talking about college a lot because that's kind of the first big adult purchase that you make with your children when they become adults. That's the first big expense that comes. So, if that expense doesn't make sense to you, think of some alternatives to traditional college. Like there are so many certifications you can get that lead into really good careers with experience, that pay off pretty well. If your child has the means and they're ready and they have, basically, if your child can go the distance, then absolutely invest in all that college if you think there's going to be a good outcome. But if not, there are so many other things that you can look at. Not everything revolves around a 4-year school, or getting a house by the time they're 30. Like there are a lot of little alternatives that you can help your kid or your adult child. I know we keep going back and forth. That is beneficial to them, So there are ways that you can help your adult child without breaking the bank,
Yeah. And here's the thing that I always think about is that parents have to my whole mantra is spread your wings and fly. And I feel like, although I have a 4-month-old, almost 4-month-old now, it's like these children, they grow and they go, but they need to be going into something that they genuinely desire to do. It can't be about what I feel is best. It has to be about, this is something that they genuinely want to do. So if I were the type of person who was all about college, I can't impose that on that child if that's not their thing. And I think that's very critical too, because when you do that and you make these investments and the child comes back and they're like, well, I never wanted to go into law. I wanted to go do art. It's like you might be upset, but you got to check yourself because you were the one who imposed that on them. So whose fault is it?
Yeah. And, I know it comes from a good place.
Of course.
You want the best for your kid. This worked out for you, or this worked out for somebody that and you can imagine them having a good life with it. So you push for it because you think, okay, I know my kid, they just need a little push. They'll get it done. But unfortunately, if you're not passionate about something that's extremely difficult, like law or medicine, it's not going to work out. It's absolutely not. Like you yourself have to want to do it, not just your parents. Because, I tried that. I tried to follow into my mom's footsteps and go into genetics, and I just don't have the brain for that. I just absolutely not, do not have the brain for that. Did not work out for me. And then I found something that fit me well, and it took me a little while. So it happens. It's always best to kind of maybe even take a gap year. I think the gap year is so important. Like, can we talk about the gap year real quick?
You know what? That wasn't a thing when I was coming out of high school, or I definitely would have embraced it. I'm all about the gap year. If it needs to be a couple of gap years, I'm with that as well.
I am all for at least one gap year. Honestly, I think 2 is the best because then you can take your time, work a little bit, figure out what you want to do, get some experience as like an adult, And then you're like, okay, now I understand what things cost. Because I think having that kind of job experience helps as well, because it really kind of puts the world into perspective for you. I know once I started working, it really helped put things into perspective for me, especially when I got a more, not necessarily high paying, but like a more corporate job. That put things into perspective for me. And I was like, okay, this is what the world is like. I need to start getting ahead. I need to find something that works for me that makes decent money that I know that I can do. And I looked for that thing, I found it, and then I went back to school. And it's been working out so far. I feel like if I had done that with like right out of high school, I would have already been graduated. I would have had my job already. I'd be a lot further in life. So
right.
that gap year is so important because let me tell you, most high schoolers have no idea. Like you'll get the occasional like upper percentage group of kids that just know what they want to do and they're super, super smart. Maybe they've got like super successful, smart parents and the genetics flowed down and they're just ready to go. But not everybody is like that. Everybody needs some time. And, 18 years old, in my opinion, is still a whole child.
Absolutely.
Whole child.
Absolutely.
Like I look back to 18, and that was just a few years ago for me. And I'm just like, man, I really had no idea what I was doing, what I wanted, what life was even really like, So gap year, kids, please take a gap year.
Well, here's the thing. I know I read somewhere that your brain is fully developed at like 26, right?
Oh yeah.
So
That's
that
completely true.
that being said, that's a huge gap from 18. That's why I don't believe in the whole 18-year-old thing or whatever. I know that you are legally considered an adult, but I don't feel like mentally you are. And there's still a lot of things that, you have to learn. And I feel like as much as your parents can help you figure out what it is you want to do in the world, they should, because I think that is the biggest challenge for most people. I mean, full grown people, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up, and they're just kind of going along with the get along. And that's not productive. So I think that, just helping your child figure out what they want to do is very, very beneficial. And if they did do a gap year, if they work for certain companies, you have certain companies that they have programs where they'll pay for your college and things of that nature. So there's some strategies that you can use, or, they have scholarships out there. There are different things that are available to your child if they just take a little bit more time or go out and seek them. So I think it's important that people keep that in mind as well. And it teaches your child, work ethic.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's, sorry, Ciera. I think that's what you're getting at, the whole concept of the gap year, which, and you can correct me, I think that was once seen mostly as a thing that kids did, or kids from certain families were able to do. Delay going to college, delay kind of getting a job and go out and do things. I think that was largely a privilege issue, financially speaking. And I think the reason it's coming into vogue now is, again, going with the, what's the new reality, if you will. When I was coming through, you could pick almost any major and come out in the 90s and be okay. There were a lot of different places you could go. Now it's very particular. You have to really thread that needle because incomes have been stagnating for 30, 40 years now. But the cost of everything has not stopped rising. Entry-level prices for homes, apartments, cars, everything. And then with that price tag for college, combined with what you said also, I think, Ablavi, about the mind not developing until age 26, forcing a career choice on an 18-year-old who just finished going to the prom and finishing some AP courses may not be the smartest thing to do if you're trying to set that person up for success. So, a gap year does make sense if they aren't laser focused and know exactly what they want to do. And it all just plays into, they're still a good investment, but how you do it and, ignoring what's happened before and taking into account what does it look like in a coronavirus 2020, world, how can I set this individual off or up for success is going to require a lot of patience. I think I heard the word grace. And I think it's just a new way of parenting, like so much else is going on right now. You have to be a person who is flexible and able to take into account what's going on to help that individual you're trying to set up for success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that was like the whole point of today's conversation is just, to get some opinions and see how we felt about that. And obviously, anybody who's listening, feel free to give your opinions as well, because I know this is a very broad topic. The world's very different. College is different. The age of like when you're a real adult is different. And personally, I think there should be a bit of a separation between like the legality of, okay, you're an adult at age of 18, and then the science behind, well, you're not fully formed until 25, 26. So you really shouldn't be making those big decisions until then. Because here I am at 25, and I finally figured out what I want to do, and I have a good plan. But let me tell you, even just a couple of years ago, I had no idea, and that's just kind of how it goes. I know plenty of people who feel the same way. I have a lot of friends who are just finishing out their college careers at, past 30, because they just didn't know what they wanted to do. They wasted a lot of time. Then they had to work because they felt the need to make some money because they were getting older, and they had to put their plan on hold. And then now that they're in a better place financially to like support themselves, they went back to college and figured it out, and I feel like that's a lot of people's reality. So,
yeah,
there's a lot.
No, and that's so true. And the good thing is, better they figure it out at 30 than 40.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's true.
Yes.
But thank you guys. This has been a really awesome conversation. I think we got a lot of good topics in. I really appreciate you guys joining me today. Thank you.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. So we'll be back next week. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Wilson Wealth Show, a thought-provoking show about building wealth in the new economy. Each week, members of the Wilson Wealth team and their guests will discuss how to navigate the world of stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship to help you build wealth in the new economy. Please join us next time on the Wilson Wealth Show.